Welcome to the Damn Good Dogcast. This is your host, Robert Reynolds. We are audio only today. It was on the website, so no video right now for today, only audio. So I'm going to jump in real fast before we bring on our special guest. Obviously, kind of a disappointing night last night. Expecting, Aziz to go first round. However, that didn't happen. However, Eric Stokes going 29th to the Green Bay Packers. I think that's a good fit for them. They needed help in the secondary, and they got a speedster to help out without getting burnt so bad that they did with NFC Championship game. So tonight, second and third rounds, expect Tyson Campbell, expect Aziz to go early. That's my prediction there. Also, commit watch. So be ready for that. 2 p.m., Denylon Morissette makes his commitment. And like I said, we are on commit watch. With that being said, I am going to bring on my special guest, Evie from the Rebel Walk. And we're talking Ole Miss football. How are you doing, Evie?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming on and talking some college football. I love talking college football, so, it's always a pleasure. So, obviously, with last night, I was surprised that Elijah Moore didn't get drafted first round. Obviously, I think he had the potential to be first round. I expect him to go early second round. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I was surprised. Although I think all along, to be honest, there are some good wide receivers in this year's draft. Obviously, as an Ole Miss person, I think that I know that Elijah is one of those. So, I actually thought he would have been taken by the Titans, or perhaps the Jaguars in the first round. So that did kind of surprise me a little bit. I don't look for him to last too long in the second round. I think that he will be taken. I mean, he could be taken. I've heard the first pick. I think the Jaguars have the first pick of the second round. So we'll see. But I think, good grief. DK Metcalf was the second round draft pick by Seattle last year, and that worked out great. So
Oh, it did, absolutely.
Elijah's probably not too worried about it. I mean, everybody wants the distinction of being taken in the first round, but he's going to work hard no matter when he's taken.
Oh, no, I agree. Watching him play this year, he really came onto the scene this year. I think with the emergence of Corral at quarterback, you look at what Lane Kiffin brought to Ole Miss when he became the head coach. He's turned that offense around, in my opinion, in a very quick manner. Like, it was very fast. It was like overnight change.
It really was, and I think that Elijah met with him when he was first hired, and just wanted to, I mean, the year before there had been the whole, episode in the end zone, against Mississippi State, and I hesitate to even bring that up because that's not who Elijah is now, but he talked with Coach Kiffin and talked about how hard he wanted to work. And Kiffin said, get ready to break all sorts of records. I mean, he knew with that offensive system and with Elijah's skill, what kind of numbers he was going to be able to put up. And he did in just 8 games. So I'm really proud of him. He's a really good kid and works really hard. And so I'm wanting the best for him. But you're absolutely right about that offense and the way Kiffin just came in and installed his system and never looked back.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, Elijah Moore has been the talk so far. But obviously, you talk about what you have right now, and a couple of the names that I'm expecting to have big seasons. One, Matt Corral. I forgot who it was, but I think a guy from Saturday Down South put out his SEC quarterback predictions, and actually Corral was number one behind or right in front of JT Daniels. So it's kind of an interesting little side story there. But watching last year, Matt Corral really separated himself. I know when Ole Miss recruited John Rice Plumlee, because I know Georgia was recruiting him well as well, and when he went there, we had the expectation that he was going to be the quarterback, but he actually turned around to play some receiver, and I think that might be his new position. Is that right?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I think that what happened last season. John Rice was a quarterback throughout the season. Matt Corral obviously took over the starting job, and John Rice would come in. They'd have some packages for him and all. But with in the Outback Bowl when we played Indiana, we were down some receivers, including Elijah Moore, who was our slot receiver. And, Lane Kiffin goes on and on about this. I mean, John Rice, with just a week or so of practice, stepped in and played slot. And he said, people think, oh, he's a quarterback, he knows the plays, it's no big deal. And he said, no, this isn't Pee Wee football where everybody can play everything. I mean, he
Yeah.
stepped into the slot and he made, a drive-saving catch that helped Ole Miss go on to defeat Indiana. Did really well, wasn't too far off, I think, from 100 yards. So a lot of people have been wanting him to consider playing in the slot because simply, I mean, that speed is just undeniable. So is his charisma. He's kind of electrifying to watch. So I think that they will definitely find a way to get John Rice on the field in some capacity.
Yeah, I know looking at the offense, I know last year it was from a high level, right? Obviously, I didn't do too much digging, but I did watch a little bit. The passing game really stood out. So, I mean, a lot of people probably aren't going to recognize the run game for Ole Miss being so because it was just so overshadowed, right, by the passing attack. But the thing about it was, it was interesting to watch Ole Miss, the way you handled Alabama, right? You threw up so many yards and so many points. I didn't expect that, and I think a little bit of that is because of Lane's history with Saban at Alabama. I just think that I think Nick kind of got a little agitated, and this was a while back though when Kiffin was still offensive coordinator there. I heard the story about Saban got pretty pissed, right? Because he was just finding ways to beat his defense, and obviously,
Right.
Saban is all about his defense. So I think that that chemistry and that knowledge with offense of with his offensive background for Lane really helped. Put it on Alabama, even though y'all didn't win. It definitely showed there was potential to expose that secondary last year. Obviously, ultimately, it didn't really matter because their
Right.
offense was just historic.
Right.
Looking at it though, I think what. So obviously, Elijah Moore is going to be gone. Do you expect the same high power offense that we saw last year? Are you thinking the same thing's going to happen this year?
Yeah, I do. And I tell you a couple of things back to your comments about rushing. I don't think because everybody thinks of Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin's, high speed up tempo, a lot of yard offense. I don't think that they realize the Rebels actually led the SEC in average yards rushing per game. They were number one. They averaged 210.6 yards a game rushing. And I think A&M was second at 205.10. Alabama was at like 183.4. So I mean, most people probably don't even realize that they led the league in yards per game average. So, but to answer your question, I do think that they're going to pick up just where they left off, and I'll tell you maybe something that's kind of indicative of that in the Grove Bowl, the spring game last Saturday, the very first offensive possession, Matt Corral hit Braylon Sanders for like a 60-yard pass. And Braylon is a senior wide receiver, and actually, he had been hurt. And, Elijah kind of stepped up. So, well, stepped up in a big way. But Braylon was hurt at the end of last year, missed I think he got hurt in the LSU game. But I think that you're going to see that's going to be kind of his Corral's new go to guy. Will be Braylon Sanders, and he's still got Dontario Drummond and Jonathan Mingo, and a host of really good receivers. And Jerrion Ely is returning as running back. He's been out. He was out of the spring game. He had shoulder surgery at the end of the fall, but he'll be back full speed. So I think Lane has plenty of weapons there.
Yeah, I was looking into it though. Obviously, you were talking about the spring game. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and I don't know if maybe my listeners might know about this, but after the spring game, Kiffin actually fired the was it the offensive line coach?
Yes, Randy Clements.
Yeah.
They
So
they parted ways. Yes.
yeah, in quotations, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right.
So I guess it's kind of one of those things where you don't really see that coming, especially like right after the spring game, wrapping up the spring camp and everything. Then you kind of back off and they part ways as they said it.
Right.
Was there any writing on the wall there? Because like I said, for that it really doesn't happen like that unless there's some, obviously some building, bad blood there. Uh, Obviously, I don't keep up with Ole Miss
Oh,
as well as I
right.
would like a Georgia, but it's still
Right.
weird. Was that something that you saw coming, or was
No,
that just out of the
no.
blue?
No, and I think really if any Ole Miss beat writer told you they saw it coming, they probably aren't being very genuine there. But because it was a surprise, and I think it was a surprise also because the offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby, I think Randy Clements was probably his handpicked guy. Although that being said, nobody is on that staff unless Lane Kiffin wants them on that staff, and so I don't know. I think part of it, I've literally there has been nothing. I mean, I can tell you, a lot of people jumped to erroneous conclusions when they heard that he was fired. It was, oh no, they must have had a recruiting issue or a violation, or maybe there was a personal indiscretion. None of that. Absolutely none of that. Nothing like that. I can assure you that. I think perhaps I mean, Kiffin, there is a method to his madness, and I mean, I'm not saying he's mad, but I mean, he
Oh, I
has
know
a
what you mean.
reason. Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much a genius as far as I'm concerned, and he's just not only has he turned around the program, but he has infused energy into a program that was pretty much on life support before he got there. So um, I was surprised by it, but do I think he has something else in mind? Absolutely. And I think at some point we'll, the rest of us will probably be able to kind of figure it out. I mean, I think recruiting is a big, big deal to Lane. Lane gets it. Where
Oh
the
no,
rebels,
I think you saw that back in Alabama and everything, and
yes,
and I'm a real recruiting like junkie. I love that stuff, and it's weird to me considering obviously it's super early in the 2022 cycle, right? The thing that sticks out to me is I well, albeit they're 4 stars, only Ole Miss only has two recruits right now, or two commits, I
right,
should say.
right.
And to me, you look that's on par with Tennessee having two, but I mean they're 3 stars, but that's a different story.
Mhm.
It's
But
weird. You look at Mississippi. I know there's a huge Georgia target, and I'm sure you've probably heard of him, Branson Robinson.
right,
You know,
right,
and obviously Georgia's going on him pretty hard. Great running back.
right.
But to me, it's just weird to see Ole Miss at this stage in the 2022 cycle only having two commits,
Well,
considering what we saw last year. With the high-powered
right.
offense and stuff like that. To me, it's kind of weird. I'm expecting it to pick up more so once the dead period ends on June 1st.
Right, right.
I think that's really when recruiting is going to take off, and it's just going to be super chaotic, but awesome to cover.
It is. I tell you what, my thoughts on that. Kiffin has some interesting thoughts, and I think he takes a lot of what he does, maybe from what he learned from Nick Saban. And I think his philosophy is nobody is committed until they actually sign on the dotted line, even if they
Oh,
say they're
absolutely.
committed. We know how that goes. But I think that there are times that Nick Saban, I know for a fact, doesn't want kids to say they've committed because then it just starts the flurry of everybody trying to get them to decommit or whatever. So I don't think Kiffin's worried at all about that. I think there probably are kids that they're pretty sure are going to be coming but have not made any announcement. And the thing that I've noticed covering recruiting for Ole Miss, and I have a wonderful director of recruiting for me, Leanne Herring, who just is on top of it all. But Kiffin has expanded Ole Miss's recruiting range. I mean, no more. is Ole Miss just content to let's just get the best kids in Mississippi? Which, I mean, Matt Luke, when he was there, I mean, his whole mantra was Mississippi made, and that is wonderful. There are some outstanding football players, as you just mentioned, in the state of Mississippi, but there are also some outstanding players, on the East Coast, and he got some from Philly, and he gets some. He's just kind of widening the net, so to speak. So that's been really interesting to see some of his targets and how he's just made it a bigger picture. And frankly, Kiffin made a big point in the first this last recruiting season to say we're going to go after the best players. Some years more of those may be in Mississippi than not, and some years it'll be different. He said, but we're not going to just take somebody because they're from our own state, and we're not going to do the thing where we take somebody because then the next year there's a really good player at their high school and we want to get them. No, those days
Yeah.
are over. So and I think that the program is and the performance and the product you see on the field will reflect that.
Yeah, I know. Looking at the two commits that you have an athlete, Marquez Dortch, out of Mississippi, and Larry Simmons, wide receiver, same out of Mississippi. And to your point here, I know you kind of keeping up with Luke when he was the head coach there. I remember that, and the recruiting wasn't as good. I think Luke's a good recruiter, but I
Right.
think he was just wanted the culture to kind of be better, in my opinion, without less
And you
focus
know
on the.
what? There is not more of a pro Matt Luke person out there than me, other than, his wife and his sister probably.
Well,
But
yeah.
I mean, I think Matt Luke held that class together after Freeze was let go. I think he kept the team together. I think there were players that, I mean, really good players that probably would have left had Matt Luke not been named the coach. I think that there was kind of whether it was the Hugh Freeze, the circumstances under which he left, um, or the entire NCAA debacle that occurred when Freeze was there. There was kind of the reputation was tarnished a bit, and I think that there is just nobody who is more of a high character, high integrity person than Matt Luke. And so I absolutely feel like Matt Luke is what the Rebels needed when they got him. So definitely want to make that clear.
Oh
I
no,
just yeah.
yeah, I know when he
So,
came over as our offensive line coach when Sam Pittman took over the Arkansas job. Uh,
mhm.
you know, he held the recruits that we had on the offensive line because at the time we had an impressive haul. You're looking at Tate Ratledge and all
Mhm.
them guys, right? That's just leading the group there, and he was really able to basically keep the recruiting class for that offensive line haul together. And myself, I was worried because we knew how Pittman recruited. The guys that he had brought in were all elite guys. And then you have that situation where he takes his head coaching job, and knowing the offensive line, those guys loved Sam Pittman. He's one of those guys that you can't really hate almost. Uh,
Right, right.
so you sit there
Absolutely.
and you at that I genuinely grew a little concerned. I was expecting to see more turnover, in regards to guys leaving. Really, the only guy that left was Braun, Josh Braun, and he went to Florida. Um, so, in my opinion, that's how kind of your point. We're talking about Luke keeping it together. I think it shows for Georgia fans as well when Pittman initially took over the Arkansas job. So,
Right.
and also to your point as well with Lane, you saw this in the past where he has a name, right, and everybody knows it. Either you love him or you hate him, but you can't deny that he has a great offensive mind. It's a real masterpiece. What you can see him do offensively. So I'm curious to see how he handles the defense because I know last year, your record for Ole Miss didn't really show a great. Uh,
Right.
it wasn't the greatest, obviously. And I think a testament to that is, you know, I think you're just Kiffin's got to get those guys in there, right? But Georgia fans, I don't know if I know you probably know who I'm talking about, but Otis Reese, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Transfers from Georgia and goes to Ole Miss. I was happy to see him. I felt like he did pretty good last year. When he made that commitment to Ole Miss, I was kind of happy for him. Uh, Obviously Georgia kind of gets that little, you know, just so much so deep that sometimes you see these guys leave and they actually do well where they go. Defensively, do you think you would, what are your thoughts on the defense? Do you see an improvement coming? Um, just curious, want to hear your thoughts on that.
I absolutely do. I tell you what, I think that defense, Kiffin, just being on the in all the Zoom press conferences and everything with him game after game throughout the season, I think that, it was obvious. I mean, he made no bones about the fact that, if we would have had a couple of defensive stops here, we win that game. And there were several games that were like that, which is why it was really encouraging in the Outback Bowl. It came down to a defensive play. Ole Miss needed to stop Indiana on their final drive, and they actually did. And while that may sound silly to put it in that in that way of yeah, they needed to stop and they got it. I mean, they had not done that throughout the season. You get one more stop against Alabama, who knows what happens? I mean, a couple of breaks here or there in against Auburn. I mean, the same thing LSU. I mean, very close games they were in that literally just come down to a few plays, getting off the field on third down, which they really struggled with. So in my mind, where Ole Miss was the weakest defensively was their defensive line. They didn't have the depth and they did not have the size. And I think that you saw in the recruiting class, this year's recruiting class that they got, they went out and they got the number one and number two JUCO defensive tackles in the country, Isaiah Eaton and Jamon Gordon, and two big kids, JUCO, I mean, literally number one and two in the nation in the JUCO rankings. And from all accounts and everything we've seen, we saw through spring, those kids are going to be big. They're going to make an immediate impact on that defensive line, getting pressure on the opposing offenses. And where they also needed some help, and they got a lot of help also, was on the back end. I think they signed like 7 defensive backs in this class. So, excuse me, a couple of them have already, are being. It's cool to ask the players when we get a chance to interview them, who of the new kids are standing out to you. And I think that they've mentioned Tysheem Johnson. Excuse me, he's doing a great job back there in the secondary. So I think Lane really addressed a lot of areas of need in this recruiting cycle.
Yeah, I know you were talking about your schedule, and if I'm not mistaken, y'all finished 4-5 last year with the A&M game being postponed. Uh, so what I want to do here is take a look at the 2021 schedule, and I just popped that up for you and for the viewers here. So let's go and, and
I
kind of
think
make
we
a
were 5-5 if you count the Outback
well,
Bowl.
yeah. Well, I mean, I was looking
Yeah.
at regular
Oh, in
season, but yeah,
conference.
you're right. You're
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
You
I'm
won the
trying to
bowl
get
game.
away from that losing record there. So yeah.
I won't. Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
So what we've got on the screen here is your Ole Miss schedule for this year. So what we'll do is we'll kind of break this down. We'll try to go since it's a 12-game regular season. We'll go the first 6 and then the last 6.
Okay.
So what we're looking at here is you start off neutral site game in Atlanta against Louisville. Then you go to then you play Austin P, Tulane. Then you have your bye week, and then you go to Bama,
Right.
and then Arkansas. And so basically, what I'm seeing here is, I think Louisville is a team in the ACC that just isn't there yet. I mean, they're middle of the pack.
Right.
I just think that I just don't know if their defense is going to be able to hold the offensive firepower. Um, so looking at the first 6 games, you got Louisville, Austin P, Tulane, Bama, Arkansas, and then at Tennessee. I'm going to skip the bye week here.
Okay.
So looking at your first 6 games, I think there's a real possibility that you can actually go 5-1.
I
Um,
agree.
and I think the one game that you can question, in my opinion, um, to make it 4-2 would be actually Arkansas.
Me
Uh,
too. I totally agree with you. Ole Miss and Arkansas just have a crazy, crazy history of some games that just go right down to the wire. And I agree with you. I think that's a tough one. I'm glad it's in Oxford.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the SEC going to, I think the SEC is going to be full capacity. There's no question about it. So definitely, this year you get that added home game or the home environment, benefit there. But like I said, I think you look at the offensive firepower, right? I think you overtake Louisville just based off the offensive firepower.
I think so too, and I think that
Look
it's
to
like,
Lane.
yeah,
I don't think you need to overlook Tulane too much because I think they're a good. This kind of falls into Ole Miss just having too much firepower on the offense. Obviously, you get your bye week and then you go to Tuscaloosa. It's hard to beat Tuscaloosa. It's hard to beat Bama in Tuscaloosa. Anybody, right? I think the only team that actually had somewhat a consistent, or not even consistent, but the ability to win in there was Auburn with Gus. Uh, so other than that, I think that's just kind of almost, I hate to say it, but it's kind of a guaranteed loss unless something drastically happens to Bama. Uh,
right, right. Now, I will say I was in Tuscaloosa covering the game in 2015 when Chad Kelly and Ole Miss beat Alabama, and that was something I will never forget.
yeah, that was
um,
a wild one.
That
Yeah.
was a wild one. That was one where Ole Miss was way ahead, and it was funny to watch. The Bama fans were all scurrying out of the stadium. They were leaving, and then Alabama, mounted a comeback, and it was a lot closer at the end. But that was a heck of a game. That's the one where Chad Kelly threw the ball and it bounced off of somebody's helmet, and Quincy Attaboy, yeah, I mean, ran for a touchdown, caught the deflection off the off the helmet and ran for a touchdown. So
Oh, that was
uh,
insane. Yeah.
that was insane. I mean, it takes, there is no doubt, it takes a little luck to beat to beat Alabama too. But I completely agree with you. That is a challenge for anybody to go into Tuscaloosa and play that team.
Yeah, and I think you look at Arkansas, right? Obviously, Arkansas plays Ole Miss pretty tough. Arkansas
Right.
with Sam Pittman there just in the first year. The record you can speak on. What it is. It's 3-7. But considering the state of that program, where it was before Sam Pittman came in,
Right.
you have that situation where you have no off season. You come in there. He hires some great offensive and defensive coordinators positions, and they really play a good brand of football. We played Arkansas last year, obviously our first game. Uh, we played kind of crappy, but at the same time, this is us trying to go through the issues we were coming through uh, with the quarterback spot, trying to figure that out before JT comes in. But we win the game, but definitely was not pretty the first half. And my take on it was at first I was like, we're just that bad. But then obviously second half comes out, and we ultimately pull away. But looking after the Arkansas game, we started kind of keeping up with them just because it's Sam Pittman,
Right.
and they really do have a good brand of football, which is one of those tough, very sound defensively. And looking at Ole Miss, you can't overlook this game, and this is why I was saying you could really be 4-2 if you're not careful. The
Right.
Bama game. How much does the Bama game take away from Ole Miss? Is it enough to make Arkansas slide in and win? Who knows?
Right. Well, just, do you come out of the Alabama game healthy? I mean, no, that is a tough physical. I mean, the size of the Alabama offensive and defensive lines, I
Oh,
mean,
they're
you
they're
you, you
massive.
got to have a yeah, you got to have a little luck coming out of there, hoping that your key players are healthy. I mean, you're absolutely right. And I tell you what, I think it was brilliant of Pittman to hire Barry Odom as his defensive coordinator. I mean, he's phenomenal. And I know when Ole Miss played Arkansas last year, in Arkansas, that was the first time that Matt Corral had seen. Well, really, that was Matt Corral's first year starting. So, people forget that. You think he's been around a while, but last year was his first year to really start, and Arkansas, Barry Odom dropped 8 against him, and he really struggled with that. And Kiffin said after the game, defensive coordinators in this league are paid a lot of money to figure out and do things, like what Barry Odom did to him. And he said, everybody else is watching, so we better figure out what to do because they're all going to start doing that, when they see it work. So I just can't speak enough about what Pittman has done, and how good I think Barry Odom is. It's a DC.
Oh, absolutely. I know looking at it this way right here, though, kind of going back into it, like I said, once you get to Tennessee, you go at Tennessee, right? I look at it right now. I think you have a chance of having one loss, right, with Bama being the guaranteed here. Away from Arkansas, I know their defense is sound. But I do think that the offensive firepower, it's a passing league right now, or the NCAA
Right.
is. So that comes to your benefit there. But moving on to Tennessee, obviously I think you'll be 5-1 there, or no, so 6-1. Sorry, Tennessee is just in a situation now where it's just it's sad. I know Heupel's trying to sit here and kind of revive it, but it is a mess. Obviously with the with the basically the self investigation and stuff like
Right.
that. As a Georgia fan, I'm loving it.
Right. I'm
It's
not. I'm
it's one
not
of our
with you.
rivals, and they do it to themselves and all that stuff. Obviously, you feel bad for the kids a
Right.
little bit, but
But I'm with
as at
you.
the end of the day, it's a rivalry, and you did it to yourself. Uh,
Right.
so then you kind of go on to the back half here. Your last 6 games, you have LSU at home. Then you go to the Plains, Liberty, Texas A&M at home, which I think y'all be ready for that game because it
Yes.
was postponed. And then
Right.
you have Vanderbilt, and then you go to Mississippi State, obviously the Egg Bowl, um, one of y'all's biggest game of the year, no question, from a rivalry standpoint.
Right.
Looking at that back half though, I think there's a chance. I think this is where it kind of evens out your record. I think LSU, coming in there, LSU's just got so much firepower. It's going to be a good matchup to see the offensive firepower from Ole Miss against Stingley, against Ricks down at LSU, and I think LSU just has it just enough to pull out a win in Oxford. Then you go to Auburn, where they're kind of in a rebuild mode, and Bo Nix, I just don't trust Bo Nix.
Me
This is
neither. Me neither.
so I think
Good
you
bow,
win
bad
that game.
bow. Right.
I think you win that game. So then you go to Liberty. I think you win Liberty. A&M, I think is a really good team. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle the loss of Kellen Mond. Honestly, though, you hear about Haynes King. Um, I think the kid's got the talent. It's just a matter of putting it on the field. Jimbo's good. He's good at getting these quarterbacks developed. Obviously, he did it with Jameis. Kellen looked great, last year. But I think A&M pulls this off. Then you bring Vanderbilt, and I think you just demolish Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is in a terrible situation right now in regards to the state of the program. Bottom feeder of the SEC. So I think you handle them pretty easily. And then you play Mississippi State. And this is where it gets interesting because you have Mike Leach and the character that he is, right? Everybody knows it. He's a character. Uh, and obviously the air raid offense, I think it causes problems for the defense. But I think your offensive firepower can manage to pull off a victory here. So I've got you barely. I got a close game. Ole Miss winning that game.
Well, it's funny. Of course, I'm going to disagree on a few of those losses in there. I think, and I think, again, all this is predicated on the defense. I think Ole Miss is going to have the offensive firepower to play with anybody. I truly believe that. Whether it's just going to be, does it come down to we literally have to score on every possession in order to, in order to win a game. But if the defense, and we've said this for a few years, and it hadn't really happened, but if the defense is middle of the pack, if it's just serviceable, I think with the offensive firepower that they have, I think that you're going to see some of those games. Maybe like I think they'll be. I actually graduated from A&M. I look for Ole Miss to beat A&M, and in terms of Kellen Mond, at times was phenomenal and at times was very subpar. So, I don't know. I mean, I think Haynes is a really good quarterback, and I mean, they even may elevate a little bit. I don't know.
Maybe.
But LSU, I mean, it's just going to depend. I mean, if all the big defensive linemen get in and get work, and are prepared, and the new guys in the secondary, I really think it's going to be an interesting game. And of the kids who signed with the Rebels in December, and again, now everybody's mostly signing in December nowadays, they had like 15 or 18 kids that showed up mid year. So we've had kids that have been there since January. And it's like Kiffin said, instead of coming in the, late summer and you're there for fall camp and you don't even know your way around, you don't know anything. These kids will have all been there now, including those two big JUCO D tackles. So I think if there's a jump in the defense, then I think if that could absolutely make a difference in a few of those games because they were close last year. But I think with a little bit more solid defense, I think some of those they could win.
I see that point. So like overall, I have it going 9-3. I think that's very respectable. I think
Oh,
that's
I do too. Yeah.
uh, yeah, I look at it in a sense. And I've had a guy from Texas A&M that covers them. I think A&M finishes second. This is just based off of my feel here. Obviously, I think you have Bama winning the East, or the West.
Right.
Then it's kind of a crapshoot. It really is when you have A&M and LSU. Can they rebound and do they get more solid quarterback play? Then you have Ole Miss with the firepower y'all have. If y'all bring this defense and make it a little bit more solid, there's some room for jostling around. It could be almost anybody's to lose that second spot. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just think that at the end of the day, and I know this is probably, and I'm understanding of this. I just think that Ole Miss finishes third or fourth, and I think a lot of that depends on the how LSU does really.
Right, right. I totally agree. I do think that it's great that the Rebels play LSU in Oxford this year. I think last year Ole Miss lost to LSU barely, and they were with Elijah Moore and their starting tight end Kenny Yeboah, who both
Yeah,
had opted out. So I mean, you hate to say who knows what would have happened, but I mean, I just think that there were some plus they were down, as a lot of people were last year. Ole Miss was down to, I mean, the numbers due to COVID that they played with
it
in
was
that
it was
game.
a it was a
Yeah,
mess last year. Yeah,
it was a mess. So it's just really hard, I guess, to even go off of anything that happened last year. But I think it's going to be a fun season. I'm really looking forward to it. I know the state of Mississippi is back wide open, in baseball. I think against Auburn when Ole Miss opened the season in baseball in March, they had 33,000 fans over the weekend, about 11,000 per game for baseball. So I think it's going to be fun. I think you're right. I think we'll have full capacity, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I am. I know. I want to get back to normal, and obviously, I think you go to Sanford Stadium, have 92,000, 93,000. Against these big games and stuff like that. It's going to be, something you don't take for granted. All right. So, like I said, with the schedule, I've got it going 9-3. What's your overall schedule at the end of the year based off of way too early predictions?
um, well, call me crazy, but I'm gonna say with a little luck, I think 9-3 is very doable. I do think that's very doable. I'm looking for I've interviewed a few of the defensive players. I kind of know their mindset and what they're looking at for this season and the standard they've set for themselves, and I think that could kind of be a difference. So 9-3, absolutely reasonable, but I wouldn't be 10-2 would not surprise me.
Hmm, interesting
There you
enough.
go. Yeah. Well, you
We're
can have me
close.
back on at the end and we'll see how I did.
Hey, looking into that, it's always interesting to see. Obviously, don't get too hyped up with these. This is
Right.
just something we do for fun.
Right.
Like I said, the key words there way too early. We get it. Anything can happen, right? We know how that goes. But no, I think you're looking at Ole Miss's schedule. I think 9-3 is doable. I think either second or third. I think A&M finishes second to me. So I can see a third place. But honestly, a third place finish in the West isn't that bad
It's
considering
nothing to
the
sneeze
level
at.
of play in
Right.
the West.
Right. Nothing to sneeze at for sure. And I'm with you. I mean, I think that A&M, I'm just going to have to see how they do. I think they lost. I think they may have lost a number of players on the offensive line, and they'll have a new quarterback. I know Anaya Smith, who's kind of their all-purpose everything. He can play running back, receiver, whatever, and He's phenomenal. So, I mean, I think that obviously, I mean, they've been in the what top 5 or 6 in recruiting every year Jimbo's been there. So they've got phenomenal players, facilities, etc. So you're right. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see them second in the West, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see them fourth in the West. I just think the room for the wiggle room in there. I mean, it's just such a grind um, in that division in the whole conference actually as you
Oh,
know. So
absolutely.
so any given day it's just hard to know what will happen. So nothing would really surprise me at this point other than, and no offense to my Vandy friends, but if Vandy finished second, that would surprise me.
No,
So
no, that
you
would.
know,
I think hell would freeze over at that point.
yeah, it could.
But no. So like I said, thanks for doing this. This season preview. I think it's always fun to kind of see where we stand at as two different teams. Fans from two different teams. So I want to give you a shout out here. I want to give you a minute here. Where can people find you? Where can they find your work? Let the people know so they can look and find you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. They can follow me at Ole Miss Evie, OLE, and then Miss Evie, EVIE, on Twitter, and they can follow at The Rebel Walk, and also find us on Instagram, Facebook, all that. But also, our website is therebelwalk.com, and they can find us there and check us out.
There you go. If anybody's curious about Ole Miss, there you go. Now, one of the things I know, obviously, this is a Georgia group, and this is a Georgia
Right.
podcast. Do not underestimate the fact that Ole Miss could very well shake some things up, and you might see a different team than Alabama playing in the SEC championship game. So you never know, right? I think you have that feel like it's going to happen. It's going to be Bama, Georgia. Anything can happen.
You
Anything
never
can happen.
know. You never know. It's like the year Ole Miss beat Alabama and was going to go to the title game, but then along came 4th and 25 against Arkansas, and
Oh,
the
yeah,
and
yeah,
calamity ensued. And 4th and 25 will forever be a dagger in the heart of Ole Miss fans as Arkansas went on to win that game, sending Alabama on to the title game. So you're right. Anything can happen. The teams in this league are so competitive. The
yeah.
coaching's so good that anything can happen.
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking college football, talking Ole Miss. Obviously Georgia doesn't play Ole Miss this year. I know it's coming up. It's going to be interesting when we play. I like when we switch it up and go to these different schools. So, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to keep up with the season once it starts. I can't wait for September 4th. I'm sitting here giddy like a kid waiting for Christmas.
Me
Uh,
too.
I think as most people are.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, just thanks for coming on and having a good chat here with the talking football and everything.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you in the season.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
All right. All right, guys. That is going to do it for the show. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the content here. Make sure to check out damngooddogcast.com. Stay up to date with schedules here. Check out where to listen, where to watch. Check out. You got it. You name it. Anything is there. You can also find any special guest that's been on the show. You name it. Check it out. But I'm going to go ahead and get a quick segment here regarding Buzzsprout, and then we're going to wrap it up. So stay tuned for the break, and go Dogs. Ever since I started podcasting, I've used Buzzsprout, and let me tell you this, you cannot go wrong with Buzzsprout. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. One of the hardest things about creating and starting your own podcast is not knowing what to do. Buzzsprout, it's super easy. They will help you out in regards to what to do. Buzzsprout will get your show listed in every major podcast platform. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and Buzzsprout is the best partner you could imagine. You'll get a great looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into your other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening,
and other tools to promote your episodes. And there's a lot more than just that. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get your message out to the world. Follow the link in the show notes and let Buzzsprout know that we sent you. Get you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for the paid plan, and it helps support our show.
All right, guys, just remember, before we get off here for the day, tonight, second and third round of the NFL draft. Like I said, stay tuned. I think Azeez, I think Tyson Campbell both go early. So it's going to be interesting to see where our dogs go. And on that note, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and go Dogs.